reporting and data entry. The following information is to educate ABCCM crisis data entry volunteers to correctly and completely document the assistance that ABCCM Crisis provides to our clients. Proper reporting and data entry are essential aspects of ABCCM Crisis. Having accurate numbers and data allows us to make informed conclusions about the impact of the services we provide. This information is also used to help us report the types of services, goods, and materials we are giving to our member churches, ABCCM Board and General Assembly, the news, Department of Health and Human Services, and sources of grant funding. Accurate data also allows us to track our clients over time to ascertain how effective our services have been to help mitigate crisis as well as long-term progress towards self-sustainability. Reporting and data entry rely on each area of the crisis ministry, and thus it is of the utmost importance that we do this correctly across the entire ministry. So, for ABCCM crisis counselors, please ensure that you are familiar with all of the types of help codes that we use to track the types of assistance that we provide. This is a fairly large and extensive list, so it is very helpful to have a list of help codes posted in your office for quick referral. So for ABCCM crisis counselors, please remember that while we may be often speaking with a guest in need of food and or clothing or something else, there are usually other types of assistance that we're providing. These are going to be referrals, advice, types of counseling, those sort of things. And since we are providing those services, we need to track that we are providing and how much of those services that we provide. Referring clients to DHHS to apply for the food stamp program, telling them about community engagement markets, or even providing, again, simple financial advice around budgeting are likely a part of a counselor's conversation with the client, and thus those need to be documented and tracked. All of these examples are types of assistance that we provide. So please remember that if ABCCM is going to assist the client, then with any kind of service that we're tracking and documenting that. Also, please remember that if we're helping someone with furniture or appliances, that you are tallying up how many of these items are on the furniture voucher that you will create, and note that with the proper help codes on the intake sheet. It is crucial that ABCCM crisis counselors confirm the household's address, phone numbers, people living in the home, and any other pertinent information, and then make any changes that are necessary on the green household information form. This is typically going to be on the left-hand side of a client's folder, and then please be sure to put the date that any changes were made on that household information form. So as you can see, we have, this is an example of a household information form. They're typically a green piece of paper, and you can see that we have a person's name, social security number, date of birth, all that sort of stuff, their spouse, that spouse's information, where they live, phone numbers, that sort of stuff. Looks like the first time we talked to them was on January 1st of 2001. This was updated on January 1st of 2011. Let's say maybe they added a phone number or something like that, and you documented that and then made sure that you wrote up here that it was updated on that date. For our volunteers that are working in the food pantry and clothing room, please help us generate the most accurate numerical data by paying close attention to the number of food bags or boxes, items of clothing, blankets, sheets, bedding, household items, hygiene items, and anything else that we're providing to our clients. The forms that we use will have places to list the type of and number of items that are provided. Those forms are then paired with the intake sheet a crisis counselors created with a client and then given to the data entry volunteers to update our charity tracker software, and then they're filed away. For our ABCCM data entry volunteers, yours is one of the most crucial branches on the ABCCM crisis ministry tree. Keeping clean, clear, and accurate records in a responsible and confidential way is how we track and in many cases make sense of what we are doing as a crisis ministry. Hopefully, all data has been labeled correctly, recorded, and is legible, However, sometimes it might not be, and so you may have to do a little bit of digging into a file to get the correct forms together with the intake sheet and the actual number of services or items that we provide to a client. ABCCM counselors will use Charity Tracker to search for clients and assess what type of assistance, advice, and referrals to give. Counselors will search for clients by either typing in their name. You can type in a full or partial spelling of a person's name and a list will populate from that search. You can put a date of birth or a social security number. You can also just use the last four of that person's social security number, and Charity Tracker will populate a list of people who match those numbers. When they have identified the client on Charity Tracker, the counselors can then see if the household information is up to date and corresponds with the person's actual physical file, as well as what assistance has been provided and to a degree from what other organizations that assistance was given. As you can see here, this is the beginning of a type of search that you can do to look for a client. So we have our example client here. You can put either the first name, the last name, or both, and or date of birth, and or social security number, including simply just the last four. You don't have to put in all of these fields. However, I will tell you that if it is a new client and you're pretty sure it's a new client, if you do put in all of those fields, it can help create a case. That's not so much for counselors, it's more for data entry volunteers, but this is the way that a counselor would search for a client on Charity Tracker. So again, if you are a data entry volunteer, it is important to look at both the household information form and crisis intake form to ensure that we're keeping the most up-to-date information in Charity Tracker. If household information is changed, there's a link at the upper right-hand corner of their personal information tab. If there have been any changes to who is actually in the home with that person, you can make those changes in the relationships tab. So again, we have our client information form. Hopefully, if there has been updated information, the counselor will have marked a date here. Sometimes that doesn't happen though. We are human after all. And so if you notice that on the intake sheet, an address is different than what is on the personal information sheet, then you can actually make that correction as a data entry volunteer and then obviously update that on Charity Tracker. So once we've searched for someone, we can then see their information on Charity Tracker. This is their personal information page. This is also where we can access their assistance page, relationships, and then again, if there's any notes or alerts or anything that we need to look at or be aware of, those tabs are here. If we need to edit this at all, we can do that by clicking onto this link here. And if there are something with the release of information that we need to know about, that can be found here. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. So if we're adding a new client, there are a few good ways to add new clients on Charity Tracker. If a person's information does not populate after searching for their name and or birth date and social security number, you will have the option to click here to create a case. This method will populate the name, date of birth, and social security number fields when you're actually entering that new client's information into Charity Tracker. As you can see here, if we're searching, we can search by putting in first name, last name, or both, and then date of birth, social security number. If we've not seen them before, there may be a list of names close to that person here, and then below that there will be a click here to create new case. That's a great way of entering someone into Charity Tracker because the next page you see will have already populated these things for you. You can also add a new case by clicking this link right here. And there's going to be a third way that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. When you're adding a person into Charity Tracker or editing a pre-existing client, please be sure to fill as many of the fields out as you possibly can with the most up-to-date information that we have. And always be sure to click yes or no in the new client field. That really helps us when we're reporting. The third way to enter a new person onto Charity Tracker is by clicking the Add Relationship link on the Relationships tab in a pre-existing client's profile, then follow the links to add a new person to Charity Tracker. Let's say that we have found this person, we have found John Doe on Charity Tracker, and we want to add a relationship to John Doe. This is the third way of adding someone onto Charity Tracker. We can do that by either creating the first relationship, clicking on this link here, or adding relationship up here. The next thing that will come up will be this pop-up screen. And so if we're, again, adding a relationship or adding a new person on a Charity Tracker through the relationship path, we can click on this link here, add a new person to Charity Tracker, and then press search. When we are actually adding someone into Charity Tracker, we will see this pop-up screen. This will have their name, their date of birth, social security number, whether or not they're a new client, which crisis ministry site they will be going to, and then further on down this way is where you'll see the fields for address, phone number, those sort of things. This is the next pop-up screen that you will see if you're adding a relationship to a pre-existing client or you're using the relationship path to add someone onto Charity Tracker. As you can see here, there's spaces to fill out the type of relationship that the two people have to one another, they both live together, and if one of them is a dependent of the other. This is an example of a intake sheet. As you can see, there are a few types of assistance that we're giving to this client. 16 bags of food, 4 items of clothing, and 2 blankets. This is where those things would be listed. So from here, this is when you can actually enter the assistance data into Charity Tracker. You can do this if they're a first-time client by clicking on the Create First Assistance Record, or by adding assistance if they're this is what it looks like when assistance has been added onto Charity Tracker. And so if they were to say come back another time, you could just simply click Add Assistance to add more assistance. This is the pop-up window that you will see when you're adding assistance to a client's Charity Tracker file. The amount is up here at the top, so 16 food bags, and the category is here. When you enter in the category, it will actually automatically populate the correct unit for that category, so you don't have to worry about this as much. Just the amount, the food bags, if there's any description necessary. It can be helpful to write a utility account number in here so that someone can refer to that later if necessary. You need to change the date or time, you can do that here. You need to change the funding source, you can do that here. There's multiple types of assistance you're putting in. Again, you can save time by pushing save and add another. Once you're finished putting everything in, or if it's just one type of assistance that we're giving, you click add. Once you have entered all of the relevant data on the Charity Tracker, please initial the Charity Tracker box on the client's intake sheet, and then either put the file back in the filing cabinets or give the file to the person putting information on a financial spreadsheet if applicable. Notes and alerts. If a note or alert needs to be added to a person's Charity Tracker file, there are tabs for that as well. These are helpful tools for people who may interact with the client at a later date and should be aware of any special situations, circumstances, potential issues, etc. And there are fields for assessments and outcomes as well. And when it becomes appropriate to use those tabs, we will train you how to do that. Release of information. It is important to ensure that our clients sign a release of information so that other organizations in the Buncombe Emergency Assistance Coordinating Network can access their information on Charity Tracker. If an ROI is expired on Charity Tracker, a yellow highlighted area will appear at the top of the client's personal information page. If this is the case, please check the intake sheet to ensure that the ROI was signed, and then follow the Renew ROI tab and fill in the appropriate date and who in the household the ROI covers. If you're adding a new person to Charity Tracker, the same yellow highlighted area will appear at the top of their personal information page with a tab to create ROI. So this is what it looks like. This is a first-time person that we're putting in. This is where the yellow tab will be, and the Renew or Create New ROI link will be up here on the upper right-hand corner of the page. When you click on that, it's going to ask you the date that it was signed and who the ROI applies to. So again, if John had children that were dependents, they would be down here, and you could click on their names because if you have dependents, you are signing for them. This is the next page that'll pop up after you've done that. This is where you can either scan and upload the signed ROI, or you can verify the ROI by making sure that you're keeping that that assistance intake sheet in their file for a certain period of time. And this is the next thing that it will show. This this pop-up will say that you are confirming that you're going to keep that signed ROI on file for 1,095 days. This is another example of an intake sheet. You can see that the person's name and information are here. The type and amount of assistance and the funding sources that we're using are here, as well as here. Again, counselors, this is really helpful for our data entry volunteers. If you go ahead and write the vendor or the property management company or landlord here, along with any EIN or social security number, it saves the data entry person time flipping through pages to look for those things if you can go ahead and write those things here. All right. And this is going to be an example of a completed intake form. So as you can see, the person has their name and information here. They have the type of assistance, the amount of assistance, and the funding sources that we're using here, as well as here. Counselors, it's really helpful if you go ahead and write the vendor that we're making a pledge to, either a utility company or a property management company or landlord, and their address and social security number or EIN here, and the amounts here. It saves a lot of time for the data entry volunteer. They don't have to go flipping through a bunch of pages to find those numbers if you go ahead and write that stuff here. If you are calling or emailing or faxing a pledge, you'll write your name or initial in these things. The data entry person who is entering this into Charity Tracker would then also initial, and then whoever's putting it on the spreadsheet would write or initial their name there. And that is a complete intake form. This has been a training for ABCCM volunteers on data entry and reporting. Hopefully it's been helpful, and if you have any questions further, you can ask your site coordinator or crisis director.